Hi, this is Tom Rhodes. Please join me as I scour the four corners of the earth to bring you interesting and intelligent, funny people who will enrich your life with wisdom and laughter. I'll take you to Europe, Australia, all over America. I might take you to the peaks of Machu Picchu, the canals of Amsterdam, the Great Wall of China, or the swamps of Florida, and certainly the many, many comedy clubs and comedy theaters all over the world. Come hang out with me and meet the many interesting people that pop up in my life as I travel the world as a stand-up comedian.
You're listening to Tom Rhodes Radio.
Karate kick, baby.
Rock and roll.
Konnichiwa, and hello from Tokyo, Japan. Hey, it's your boy Tom, and this week's episode is just me talking to you all by myself. I am on a 2.5-week tour of Asia. I'm starting now in Japan, and then I'm doing shows in China, Mongolia, and Thailand. I'm really excited about Mongolia. I've never been to Mongolia, and it's been 10 years since I had done shows in Tokyo. And wow, I am completely in love right now with Tokyo, Japan. It's been years since I had been here, and you know, I always say that going to Japan is like visiting the future. I remember I was in Japan like 15 years ago, and I saw at a gas station they had the TVs above the gas pumps, and they were showing commercials. And I remember like 3 years after that, I saw them in California, and then 5 years after that, they were everywhere in the United States. It's ubiquitous now all over the United States and all over the world. You go to gas stations, and above the gas pump is TV screens blasting commercials at you. Not that that's a good thing. Certainly there's noise pollution and it is irritating. But I don't, speaking of, I wouldn't call them irritating, but I think there should be a channel 24 hours a day of Japanese commercials. Japanese commercials are hilarious. They're constantly screaming and yelling at you and bizarre characters, and Japan is such a fascinating place. It's like, it just, for some reason, it just reminds me of Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner. I haven't seen the new one. And so let me regale you with some factoids, some knowledge nuggets about Japan that will delight your cerebral cortex, and then tell you about my trip so far. Number one, I reached diamond level on Delta Airlines last year, and one of the perks that I got to choose from being a Delta Diamond Elite was I got to choose global upgrades for international trips where I get bumped up to first class. So there's only a couple months left on this year, and some of the flights I did earlier this year to Australia and to Europe did not qualify, and I felt like I had blown my choice of my choice benefits for the Delta Diamond Elite, and I finally got to use one on the flight here from Los Angeles. I got upgraded to first class, and for the first time in my life, I had one of those reclining bed seats. You know, it's so funny, the thing about first class, like, I don't know, it's maybe growing up not rich, but times I've walked through first class and I'm going back to my economy seat, I always think to myself, who are these rich assholes, and why do they deserve such luxury? Now I got to be one of those rich assholes, thanks to my gaining 125,000 miles in frequent flyers of my ass in a seat last year. And I'm reading Genghis Khan's biography to get ready for my visit to Mongolia. I'm like super excited about going to Mongolia and entertaining the Mongol hordes. And I'll talk more about that. Hopefully, I'm going to do an episode from China, another episode from Mongolia, another episode from Thailand. That's my desire, but we'll see how things pan out. So it was the most delightful flight of my entire life, flying to Japan. So maybe that's why I'm in such a good mood about it. So I had the long reclining bed seat. I'm reading my Genghis Khan biography, and Jesus, they bring you a menu. You get to choose the meal that you want instead of first class, or I'm sorry, economy, where they just throw, you get to choose noodles or chicken or go fuck yourself. And I had lamb and vegetables. It was a tiny little piece of lamb about half the size of your fist. And it was so delightful. I finished it, and the flight attendant, the woman's name was Yoko. Super nice and friendly, elderly Japanese woman. And how wrongly we have shit on the name Yoko because Yoko Ono was blamed for breaking up the Beatles. So I finally met the good side, the flip side of the coin. The good Yoko, the one I just had on the flight, brought me a second helping of lamb as I sat there and read my friggin' book. It was so delightful. I get picked up in Japan. JJ, the comedian from Montreal, who lives in Tokyo now, and he's part of the stand-up Tokyo scene, who set up the gig, picked me up, made sure I met the owner of the venue. This place is called Good Heavens. It's a British pub, a very nice place, owned by super nice, friendly English guy. So as the story goes, apparently the comedy scene was struggling. Local comedians was all they ever got in Tokyo. This is the way I heard the story. I think you might enjoy this. But so there's the Comedy Store Tokyo, not affiliated to Sydney, London, or Los Angeles. Somebody should have copywritten that name because Comedy Store is used everywhere. So there's Comedy Store Tokyo, and then there's Stand Up Tokyo. And apparently Hannibal Buress was over in Tokyo 2 years ago. Excuse me while I take a sip of my Japanese green tea. Do you know if you slurp noodles in Japan while you're eating it, it's considered that you are enjoying your meal? Whereas in the United States and North America and the rest of the world, we think you're a loud, inconsiderate turd. Anyway, if you come to Japan, you can slurp all you want. Here's a little slurp for you. Yummy. Hot green tea. So apparently Hannibal Buress had done... this is the way that the story was told to me by the local comedians. He was on vacation here. He contacted the dude from the Comedy Store Tokyo who had never heard of him and said, "No, I'm sorry, man. You got to sign up for the open mic night just like anybody else." Or apparently got snappy with him and told him something like that. And then Hannibal thought, fuck you, I will go to these other people. And the other people were the Stand Up Tokyo people, and they knew who he was, and they were thrilled to have him. And then Hannibal did like 2 sold-out shows. It totally put them on the map, made stand-up comedy kind of a visible thing among expatriates and English-speaking Japanese people. And then last year, Jim Gaffigan did 2 sold-out shows there. So, and then now me, that's the string of professional comedians that they've had. Other than that, it's just been local comedians. But I think that's really, there's such funny hit or misses in history. You know, the other club could have benefited from Hannibal Buress wanting to just get some stage time and work on some bits while he's in Tokyo, and the other guy didn't know who he was and treated him like a friggin' open micer. And then the other place benefited greatly. So maybe that's the way fate wanted it. Nah, fuck fate. That's the way assholes mistake wanted it. Okay, so hey, let's learn some things about Tokyo. Japan means land of the rising sun. I'm sure you probably know that. Japan has one of the longest life expectancies in the world. Men typically live to 81 years old, and women typically live to 88 years old. Another thing is there's more. In Japan, there are over 50,000 people who are over 100 years old. That's pretty remarkable that there's that many people who are over 100 years old. And there are more older people in Japan than there are infant babies. And apparently, more adult diapers are sold in Japan every year than baby diapers. That's a pretty interesting factoid. Japan has over 3,000 McDonald's, the largest number outside of the United States. In Japan, Ronald McDonald is called Donald McDonald because Japanese people have a hard time pronouncing R sounds. Isn't that adorable? That's adorable. Japan has the longest life expectancy of any other country in the world, but they also have the second highest, they have the second lowest homicide rate in the world. So there's no murder. People live a long time, but they also have one of the highest suicide rates in the world. So as much as the fish and raw vegetable diet will give them longevity in their life, a lot of young Japanese people are miserable and saying, fuck that, I'm checking out of this Earth hotel. So, the Japanese eat more fish than any other people in the world. In Japan, Kit Kat bars come in flavors like grilled corn, camembert cheese, Earl Grey tea, grape, and wasabi. I was given a gift of wasabi Kit Kat, and they weren't that great. It's sweet. It's not spicy like you would imagine. If it tasted like wasabi chocolate that you would imagine, I think they would be really nice, but it's not. In Japan, black cats are considered good luck. This is interesting. In Japan, Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, is the typical Christmas Eve meal. Everyone in Japan apparently goes to Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas Eve, and they all go home with buckets of this shitty, tiny pieces of chicken, and that's their special meal. Well, no wonder they're probably killing themselves. They're thinking, I worked my ass off all year, and this is my reward? Antibiotic filled tiny pieces of shit, tiny chicken. Cartooning, anime is massive in Japan. So apparently cartooning began in the 12th century in Japan, and more paper is used for comics and drawing comics in Japan than toilet paper. That's pretty remarkable. There are only 4 countries in the world that were not colonized by European countries. Japan, Korea, Thailand, and Liberia in Africa. It's pretty amazing. To this day, Japan is the only country to ever have a nuclear bomb detonated on its soil. Kumamoto was the original target of the atomic bomb dropped by the U.S. Air Force, but on the day of the flight in April 1945, Kumamoto was covered in clouds and the bomber passed it by, dropping the bomb on Hiroshima instead. That's interesting. I wonder if the people of Hiroshima or Kumamoto are resentful to the people of Hiroshima. Dirty pricks. We got your punishment. Walking around it's interesting. There's what's that? Shibuya? I guess that's this main area of Tokyo where just thousands of people are crossing the street. There's a statue of a dog, and apparently this dog was so loyal to its owner, it would go to the train station and wait for its owner to come home from work and then walk the guy home. And then one day the owner was killed, or he had a heart attack and died. Maybe he killed himself. Who knows? But the dog waited at the Shibuya train station, and there is a statue of this little dog. Which is interesting because in Edinburgh, Scotland, there is a statue of a dog also rewarded for his loyalty. The dog's owner had died, and the dog went to the cemetery every day or would sleep on the man's grave. And in Edinburgh, there's also a statue to a loyal dog. That's pretty interesting. Thanks for sharing, Tom. I think it's interesting in Japan, and you go around to other parts of Asia. I noticed this in Japan where they always, and it happens everywhere in Asia, if you've traveled around Asia, they make the peace sign in every photo. And it's not just young girls, it's boys, men, older people. It's really kind of irritating that everyone makes the peace sign when they're getting their photo taken. And I am completely against war of any kind, but if that's what it takes to get Asian people to stop making the peace sign in every photo, well, you understand. All around the area where the club was is all these vintage clothing stores, and it's really interesting because it's shit that people are throwing away in the United States. People must be going to thrift stores in the United States and buying up everything that they can possibly buy up. There were just T-shirts of, from like high schools and colleges and, Joe's Plumbing Service and, Pickle Butt, Arkansas or whatever. And then the big hot selling item was, and it seemed to be really pricey, was the lumberjack shirts that you see everywhere. Lumberjack shirts are like all the rage and being sold for pretty top dollars in the vintage thrift stores in Tokyo. And if you have a bunch of vintage or older lumberjack shirts, I suggest that you fill up a suitcase with them and bring them to Tokyo because it'll probably pay for your trip. And then in some of the vintage stores, they had it sectioned off, like Pendleton lumberjack shirts being the ones that were the most expensive. $300 for a Pendleton lumberjack shirt. And then there was like LL Bean was the next step down. And then all these other companies, Wrangler, whoever else you can think of, Gap, Levi's, blah, da, blah. But also, and then people are they must be buying them because they're priced at like $50, $60 each. And they're like crappy, worn out old American T-shirts from wherever. That just blew my mind. So I'm going to go to Canada, Minnesota, and I'm going to buy me some lumberjack shirts. Okay, so looking for some more facts for you. Beer cans in Japan have braille on them so that blind people will not mistake an alcoholic beverage for a can of soda. Amazing. People eat horse meat. It's a delicacy in Japan. The other comedians that I worked with, well, first of all, man, I was walking around with JJ. He took me around on a tour of Tokyo, and we popped into. He said, "Oh yeah, that says." I go, "I want ramen. I want some authentic ramen." There's a place that opened on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles, and people are lined up for a block. You got to wait an hour to get in there, and it was authentic ramen with homemade noodles and everything. So we're walking around Tokyo, and the guy goes, "Oh yeah, that's just like a lunch counter, working man's ramen shop." I go, "Let's give it a shot," and we got spicy broth, and holy shit. It's one of the greatest things I have ever eaten. It was so incredible. Oh yeah, so there was in the neighborhood where did the show and where I was staying. The other comedians took me out to eat, and what was it? God, they brought out mackerel, and they burned it with a blowtorch right in front of you, and then you squeezed lemon on it. It was funny because all the Japanese worker people, like whoever they gave the lemon to in your party to squeeze it, it's supposed to be an honor. And then everyone in the after the guy blowtorches it, he goes, "Okay, lemon," and then you squeeze the lemon on, and the guy yells, "Nice lemon," and then all the other workers in the place go, "Nice lemon, nice lemon." It was really, really interesting. It was adorable. So at this restaurant where we were eating, they served horse meat. And where was the guy from? Was he Canadian? I forget. This other comedian says, "Do you want to try the horse meat?" And I said, "No, thank you." And he said, "Why? You eat pig, right?" And I said, "Yes. Let me put it to you like this. Nobody gets dressed up to watch pigs race." That's where I'm drawing the line. Yeah, I don't eat oysters, and I don't eat horse meat. Don't want to eat. Anyway, don't want to eat the really, really cute, lovable. But they had octopus, and I ate the fuck out of some octopus. Taking the subway in Tokyo. If you go to my Instagram, I posted a bunch of pictures of stuff from all over my walking around Tokyo in the last couple of days. It's just so fascinating to go to Tokyo and ride the subway and look at people and kids and old people. And the one thing about Japan is, God, the girls wear these like kind of sexy schoolgirl outfits, but the objectification of women in Japan seems to be a thing. I remember, or like it's not that big of a deal. Like feminism seems to be taken over and women trying to get strong voices. But as much as a progressive economic powerhouse as you think Japan is, I don't know. Am I wrong to make that observation? I remember 10 years ago when I was in Japan, the style that I saw everywhere was Japanese girls in beige trench coats, buttoned up, and underneath they had fishnet stockings and high heels. It was almost like a pervert had designed the female fashions of Japan. And there's something about the female fashions that it always seems like it was some pervert friggin' designed it. But in my opinion, I think that the trendsetters for fashion around the world are young African American teenage men and men in their 20s, and very young Japanese girls seem to be the ones that are setting all the trends for what's cool in the world for people to wear. Oh, and hip hop is massive. Everywhere you go is hip hop. Looking for some more. I went into a video. The apartment that I stayed in, that I'm staying in, was a lot bigger than you would have expected. I've stayed in hotels before in Japan, and there's like the bed, and you don't even have enough room to open up your suitcase. I went into an arcade, a video arcade, and they had these massive drum games where like you got two drums in front of you, not like a drum set, but like more like tribal drums or like drums you'd see on a Polynesian island. And then the object of the game is you got to beat on the drum to to score the points. It was very bizarre and very interesting. Okay, here we go. Let me find some more facts for you. Okay, so yeah, here's some knowledge nuggets about Japan. I think Japanese people are admirable in their ruthlessness. If you commit suicide in Japan by jumping in front of a train, the family of the deceased will be charged a disruption fee. Wow, that's pretty stone cold Steve Austin. I can see the father getting the bill in the mail and just shaking his head, thinking to himself, damn it, that boy couldn't do anything right. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to name it the Bullet Train. Here's another interesting, mind-blowing fact about Japan. Japanese death row inmates are not told the date of their execution. They wake up every day wondering if it will be their last. Woo! Holy shit. Man, that could be a friggin' reality show waiting to happen. That'd be pretty severe punishment. And this fact, I think, is probably my favorite. The sole Japanese man who survived the sinking of the Titanic in 1914 was called a coward in Japan for not dying with the other passengers. When he returned to Japan, the citizens of Japan thought he was a coward for not dying with the other passengers. I just love this thought for some reason. I just love the fact that this guy is walking around. He's probably one of the luckiest human beings ever to walk the face of the earth. And people in Japan are just looking at him, shaking their head and thinking, what a pussy. He had the chance to die like a man, and he passed it up. Interesting. Okay, so as regular... Oh, yeah, in Japan they have 70 different flavors of Fanta soda. And some of the flavors are mystery fruit, genius energy, and hip-hop flavor. It's interesting. I have not had a chance to go into a grocery store, but I would like to try hip hop flavor. Man, I took a really cool photo. It's on Instagram. This Japanese guy, and he's got a yellow Adidas tracksuit on, and he's got a big yellow. He's got big gold chains, and he's got a Kangol hat on. And he had tons of rings, like the coolest guy. I'm looking for the photo right now. I don't know why. But anyway, I posted it on Instagram, and this dude is like the coolest guy in Japan. And then also I posted some photos where some of the fashions, like I was talking about the objectification of women, some of the women there dress like they're like 10-year-old girls. And then there was another style. I had read about this on the internet, but I only saw it once on the train, and I didn't take a picture. There's this like sickly trend where women will do their makeup to make it look like they're sick. I thought it was bullshit when I read it online, and then I saw a woman on the subway that had the sickly, trendy style of makeup. Either that or she just was shitty at putting her makeup on. Oh yeah, and then there's a tour in Japan where people ride go-karts in downtown Tokyo, and like everybody dresses up like Super Mario, the video game characters, and they trust me, it exists. I saw it, and then someone told me, yeah, oh yeah, that's a thing here now. I went to this electronics shop, and I apparently, there's still a massive Tower Records in Tokyo, Japan, and the Japanese are the number one consumer of CD music. They still buy CDs. And then in this electronics shop, I saw they were also selling boom boxes with cassette players that had like the double cassette thing. If I was only going to Japan and would have been going right back to Los Angeles, I would have bought one. It's like the '90s when boom boxes with cassettes were all the rage. It made me so happy to see that. Oh yeah, and then in this electronics shop, I also posted this photo of a businessman. He's sitting in one of those massage chairs, and he took his shoes off, and these Japanese apartments are so small. Why would you buy one of those chairs when you can just go to the electronics shop and nobody's going to steal your briefcase? Okay. Streets are amazing. Apparently, half of the streets in Japan have no name. Maybe that's where U2 got their inspiration for Where the Streets Have No Name. In Japan, there's a festival every year that celebrates the penis. It's the Penis and Fertility Festival. It's somewhere outside of Tokyo, like hours. I would love to go to the Penis Festival. I know you thought I was going to say, well, let's move on. You can buy eel-flavored ice cream in Japan. Okay, anyway, so this trip has been an absolute success for me. The show was great. It's like a room. The room held 100 people. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to tell you. The room held 100 people. I'd say about 45% of the audience was Japanese, English-speaking people, and then the other half were expatriates from all over the world. Oh my God, there was 3 people from Dublin, Ireland that were in the audience, and I said, oh my God, I was in Dublin in June doing the Dublin International Comedy Festival, and they said, we know, we saw you there. That's why we're here. So Time Out magazine of Tokyo ran a highlight on my show saying I was one of the things to do in Japan this past week. And these people from Ireland were just on vacation. They don't even live there. And they came and saw me. The show, I put so much effort into the show. Some of these factoids, and I talked about the way of the samurai. I could not have been happier with the show. I did an hour and a half, and honestly, I impressed myself with, I did like jokes for the first half, and then I did the is there anyone from a different country in the world game for 20 minutes, and then I told personal stories at the end. And there was a woman from Russia in the front row, a woman from Iran to my left, which I said I don't have an Iran joke. Many years ago I dated a woman, a Persian girl, And she told me that the way you remember how to pronounce Iran is you say Iran to Iran. And I said, I do not have any Iran jokes. I'm sorry that the nuclear agreement has collapsed, but please allow me to quote some Rumi. Rumi, in the book I Heard God Laughing, there's a poem, and he says, I would like to make your body my prayer carpet. Anyway, I was just on fire with the audience, with the people, the different countries that I got. There was a dude from Columbus, Georgia, with the Russian girl, and I told him I started out on the southern circuits, and Columbus, Georgia, the number one industry is the Hostess Cupcake Factory. The entire town revolves around the making of cupcakes. And he was like, oh, Georgia sucks, Columbus sucks. And I was like, you should have more pride in yourself, because that's where cupcakes come from. Okay, so, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It's so funny to do a podcast by yourself. So I have this little recorder that I brought with me. I just put out my new live album, All Hail Laughter. You should buy the fucking thing. Support your boy, Tom. What is it, $10? $9.99, iTunes, Amazon. And there's 2 shows on there. So it's 2 albums for the price of 1. So my next album, I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Next year I want to put out an album where every track is in a different country around the world. So I've already recorded Paris, Amsterdam, and Dublin, and Sydney. And I was recording the Tokyo show. Excuse me. My wife hates that. I was recording the Tokyo show, and I could not have been happier with this show. I was impressing myself. I'm destroying the fucking place. And then there was a ledge on behind the stage that I had the recorder on. And after I was on for an hour, I leaned back and the fucking recorder fell and hit the ground and it stopped recording. So I already talked to the owner. I'm going to have to go back to Tokyo next year, because I want to have a Tokyo track on my album next year. So as great as I felt about that show and destroying the place, I was so bummed out that I didn't secure the fucking recording thing better than I did. But whatever. Anyway, hey everybody, I'm going back to Tokyo, and you should plan on being there with me. So the trip to Japan, total success, because I bought, in the electronics part of town, I got samurai sword chopsticks. And anybody who knows me, anybody who listens to the podcast regularly, knows that Hagakure, The Way of the Samurai, is one of my favorite books of all time. I think everybody should read this book. There's different translations of it. So the one that you should get is Hagakure, The Book of the Samurai, Yamamoto Tsunetomo. That's the one. Tsunetomo. Yamamoto Tsunetomo. That's the one that you need to read. So here are some highlights from The Way of the Samurai. And I learned about this book from the movie Ghost Dog with Forrest Whitaker. He's an assassin living in Brooklyn, and he has modeled his life as an assassin through this book. It's such a cool book, such a cool movie, and that movie is what led me to this book. So here you go. Here's some of my favorite highlights from the book. Throughout your life, advance daily, becoming more skillful than yesterday, more skillful than today. This is never ending. This is the way of the samurai. When one is writing a letter, he should think that the recipient will make it into a hanging scroll. In the words of the ancients, one should make his decisions within the space of 7 breaths. I love that. So whatever decision you need to make, don't rush into it. You need to count 7 breaths before you make a final decision on anything, and that will give. And that's funny. I've tried that in the last couple of days since I've read this thing, and it's like usually your mind is made up before you've inhaled number 2. So when your brain is thinking and you're making a decision, 7 breaths is actually quite a long time. So and then the oxygen rejuvenating your brain cells, pretty interesting. Especially, this was like the fucking 12th century? Anyway. In the words of the ancients, one should make his decisions within the space of 7 breaths. This one's my favorite. The heart of a virtuous person has settled down, and he does not rush about at things. A person of little merit is not at peace, but walks about making trouble, and is in conflict with all. Beautiful stuff. Okay, so that's from the book. Now, here, doing my homework on Japan, after I Googled interesting facts about Japan, I Googled interesting and amazing facts about samurais. So this is going to blow your friggin' mind. Samurai tested swords by cutting people in half. Hey, that's not very nice. Sometimes when the client purchasing a sword was particularly wealthy or of high enough social standing, the sword would be tested on a live, often screaming, condemned criminal. Depending on the severity of the crime committed, the criminal could lose a limb or be cut completely in half, with the ease with which this was done being used as a selling point for the weapon. Wow. Okay. Samurai randomly killed people for fun. This was also known as crossroads killing. Invariably undertaken by a samurai who'd recently purchased a new weapon or mastered a new technique for turning someone's bowels inside out. They would walk around at night, testing their new weapon or technique on the first person they found. While these wanton acts of night stabbing were technically illegal, few samurai were ever arrested for doing it because it's really hard to arrest someone for a crime that involves killing the only witness and then running away. And in the rare event that a samurai was caught cutting down an innocent civilian, they could always claim they were invoking their right to murder people they thought who had insulted them. Wow. Maybe the samurai weren't such nice people after all. Samurai used to shoot dogs with arrows for sport. Women had to pay to marry them. Common women wanting to marry a samurai had to pay them for the privilege of becoming what amounted to a servant. That last part isn't hyperbole either. It's noted that one of the most valued traits in samurai wives was obedience. And they were basically expected to do everything for their husband, including making themselves available for sex 24/7, which wouldn't be as insulting for the woman if their husbands weren't also allowed to have mistresses if they wanted. This one is amazing. Wives were expected to kill themselves if their husband messed up. Seppuku is the act of cutting your stomach open if you made a mistake or brought shame on your people. So to commit seppuku, a samurai would slice open his own stomach with a small blade before his head was ceremoniously cut off by a trusted associate so as to minimize their suffering. Though this wasn't the only way in which seppuku could be committed, it was by far the most common. But here's where things get weird. When a samurai screwed up so badly that he felt that he needed to commit seppuku to die with at least a shred of honor intact, his wife was expected to kill herself also. While functionally similar to male seppuku, female seppuku involved slicing the neck instead of the stomach, and the woman was expected to tie her legs together beforehand so that her body would be found in a dignified pose. You don't want to kill yourself, fall over, and then your legs are wide open, and then people see your panties or your vagina after you're dead. Well, pretty fucking hardcore, man. Okay, so also, this is the last one before I kiss you goodnight from Japan. Samurai used to have lots of sex with teenage boys, and it was encouraged. Older samurai would mentor young men, and it was not uncommon for them to have as much sex with those young men as they wanted. Wow. So that was, it was encouraged. Older men had young proteges. They would teach the secrets of being a samurai. This is all very new to me. I never have ever heard this in my life. So just got this off the internet. And wow. So they're, having sex with young boys. Incredible. So for the last 10 years, I have ended every email that I've sent to anybody with a respectful samurai head bow to you, sir. I'm going to have to think twice about that now when I send that out, or whatever. Be conscious of, I don't know what to say. It's fucking weird. Seppuku was the act of cutting open one's own stomach or plunging a sword into one's own stomach if a samurai felt that he had made a mistake or committed a shameful act, which just goes to show you that gay people can be very dramatic sometimes. Hey, that is my special Tom Rhodes reporting from Tokyo, the Tokyo Rhodes episode. Tokyo Rhodes, for those of you who don't know, was in World War II, this female woman broadcast from Tokyo, and her name, her pseudonym was Tokyo Rose, and she would, they would play rock and roll records, not rock and roll, but just music that the American soldiers liked, and the woman, it was a steady stream of propaganda. Hey, American GI, your girlfriend is probably back home having sex with somebody, and it was like a pirate radio signal out of Tokyo, and the woman was called Tokyo Rose. So I've already made plans to come back here next year. I want to come back to Japan during baseball season so I can finally go see a Hanshin Tigers game in Osaka, Japan. And I think that you guys should plan on coming to Japan and eat some ramen and buy some samurai sword chopsticks and go see a baseball game with me. So that is my episode. I'm glad I'll get a chance to come back and record for the album I want to put out next year. I thank you all so much for taking this little ride with me through knowledge nuggets and my Japan experience. And in closing, aside from Long May You Run, I just want to say, with a respectful samurai head bow, to you, sir, E, female, sir. Yeah, okay, that's it. Arigato.
I've been walking by the river. I've been walking down by the water. I've been walking down by the river. I've been feeling so sad and blue. I've been thinking, 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 I've been thinking. I've done so much suffering in this. Too much confusion, too much confusion in the world. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me way 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 back. Ah, take me way, 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 way back. Ha, help me understand. Take me, do you remember the time, darling, when everything made more sense in the world? Yeah. Oh, I remember when life made more sense. Take me back, 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 take me back. Oh, to when the world made more sense. Well, there's too much suffering and confusion, and I'm walking down by the river. Let me understand religion. Way back, when you walked in a green field, in a green meadow, down an avenue of trees. Summer. And the sky was blue. You didn't have no worries. You didn't have no care. You were walking in a green field, in a meadow, full of buttercups in the summertime. And you look way out over the city and the water. And it felt so good. It felt so good. You keep on walking. so much soul. Have so much soul. And you listen in the nighttime when it was still and quiet. And you looked out on the water, the big ships, the big boats kept on sailing by. You felt so good. Yeah, I felt so good. I found when I blow my harmonica. When I understood the light, when I understood the light, in the golden afternoon, in the golden afternoon, in the golden afternoon, in the golden afternoon, in the golden afternoons, when we sat and listened to Sonny Boy blow. In the golden afternoon, when we sat and listened to Sonny Boy blow his horn. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me way, 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 way back when I understood when I understood, yeah. Oh, take me way back when I was walking down the street. Doesn't matter. Cause everything felt, 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 everything felt so right and so good. 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 Everything felt so right and so good, so good. In the eternal night, in the eternal moment, in the eternal now, in the eternal moment, in the eternal now. Everything felt so good, so good. So good, so good, so good, and so right, it's so right, it's so right, just it's so good, it's so right, it's so right. In the eternal moment, 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 when you lived in the light. Lived in the grace, in grace, when you lived in the light, in the grace, and the blessing.